right, it is 6 p.m., so I will call to order this regular meeting of the Whitestown Fire Board for the date of September 3rd, 2025. Roll call, please, Chief.
Mike Hancock.
Here.
Jim Baldwin. Present. Eric Nichols.
Here.
Dan Patterson.
Here.
Michelle O'Connor. Casey Copeland.
All right, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Item 2, approval of the agenda. Any changes to be made to the agenda? If not, I would hear a motion.
I will make a motion we approve the agenda as submitted. Second.
Motion made, seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carries 4-0. Agenda approved. On to item 3, approval of the minutes. Any comments, changes, or issues with the August minutes as they were presented? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
I would make a motion we approve the minutes as presented.
And I'll second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Also carries 4-0.
Abstain from that since I wasn't here.
He did. So let the record show that Jim abstained since he wasn't here, so it would be 3-0. Circulate those for signature. Item 4, public requests to speak. We have none in the audience. Anybody online? Does not look like it. All right. Item 5, presentations. We show none. Takes us to item 6, stats and updates. Chief.
All right. So for the month of August in public education and PR, we attended a Main Street Touch a Truck event, a Parks event actually. Traders Point football game standby. 2 of those in the month of August, and we attended the Culver's Heroes Night event as well. For additional updates, I did make a selection and promoted former Division Chief of Training Sam Shell to the Deputy Chief of Operations. So I was able to wrap up that process, and we have an ongoing process right now for the Division Chief of Training position that has been vacated. So additionally, on top of that, we had all our hydraulic extrication equipment annual service completed. Inspections and prevention. So we had 86 annual inspections, 13 other inspections, and 35 alarm and sprinkler systems tests for a total of 134. Fire training, we had 1,311 hours of training. The main training we had for the month of August was some rope rescue training that was conducted across all 3 shifts and utilizing the water tower on Main Street to simulate a stranded victim for rescue there. And then as far as the Northside Fire Academy goes, I'm happy to announce that Kyle Affolter is actually on his first shift today. He did pass EMT class, so he is on, and that makes number 7 that we were hoping for all the way through on shift and working for us. So congrats to him. The monthly EMS report, we had 245 hours of EMS training, 93 patient contacts, 90 transports. You can see the breakdown there, 37 basic life support, 43 advanced life support, and 0 advanced life support 2, and 3 no transport, for a total of 857 transported miles and billed services of 119,292. Continuing on with the increase in our translation service, you see the video minutes of 20 and audio minutes of 48.
Chief, is that one particular language or is it several?
It's multiple. I'm not quite sure 100% how it breaks down. I think it breaks down between Spanish and then all other languages. So without reaching out to them, I couldn't tell you the specifics, but there are more than one.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And moving on to the EMS billing report. So August, we had a month-to-date revenue of $40,182.76, bringing our year-to-date revenue to $325,733. which is a 12.47% increase from where we were at this point last year. Moving on to the run statistics section, we had 189 runs for the month of August, bringing our year-to-date total to 1,373, with all the typical different breakdowns. And then we are at a difference of negative 13 runs from where we were at last year with a 1% decrease. So that decrease is closing the gap again as we ebb and flow throughout the year. And then all the extra incident location maps as well are in your packet.
Chief, are all vehicles out of the shop and in service currently?
No. Our 2019 Rosenbauer Ladder 272, they are still chasing the antifreeze leak issue and the exhaust issues that are on that. The good news is we found out today that what they are tracking and looking at now is all covered under warranty. So that's a plus side, but it is still out of service and at the shop, so the downside of that.
Thank you, Chief.
Any other questions, discussions on the runs, training, et cetera report? Give just a couple more. All right, thank you, Chief. Takes us to item 7, unfinished business, to item E, the 2026 proposed budget. So this was introduced last month, and Chief did some walkthrough on it. Any questions or discussion around the budget? Now that there's been time to digest. There is a slight decrease in the supply section. We went from 477 to 457. What's that on, Chief?
The deduction, is that what you're asking?
Looks like fire supplies, we dropped 20.
So the proposed budget that was submitted was, those were a couple items that I still had a little bit higher than what Crone had proposed. So I went with Crone's numbers that were in here and took that back down for a 0% increase. And I think there was a couple items like that that were off a little bit to give you that price.
Okay. That was all I had on that. Any other questions, thoughts, discussion? Now, we certainly can take a vote on this tonight. We don't have to. If there's further questions or people need more time to digest, we will have to at the next fire board meeting, one way or the other, as council budget happens in October. But we are certainly welcome to take action on this if we have no additional questions or issues for Chief in order to clear it from the docket. Not sure what the interest is.
Chief, since I wasn't here last week, you may have already addressed this, but on the fire debt service, it went down like 56%. Is that,
Sorry, that deduction is from leases being paid off.
okay. And I apologize if you already answered that last month.
That's all right.
No worries, ask away.
You got a 16% reduction in your fuel. Is that just because prices are going down?
That is just currently based off the trending this year within our budget. So it's really kind of taking the average of what we're paying monthly this year. There's a slight adjustment to kind of round off that number for the fluctuation, but that's where we're at currently.
Okay. And then the only other question I have is, and like I say, I apologize for not being here last month, but on the very top, your holiday sick pays, 457 match, and your vacation cash out, all zeroed out.
So that was requested by Crone and the clerk's office to combine those into the full-time staff line. So that's what the numbers out to the right side are,
Okay.
is what those amounts are that are put in that full-time staff line.
So that'll basically become part of the town budget.
No, that is still part of the fire budget. It's just into that one line,
I got you.
not
I got you.
not separated out.
I got you. Oh, okay, okay. Right. Okay, all right. Thank you, Chief. And Mike?
Any further questions on the budget? And if not, I'm open to discussion as to what we want to do or not do with it for either addressing tonight or wait to address in October.
Mr. Chairman, I would suggest addressing tonight and moving it on if we can, just to make things a little bit easier in October. But of course, if other people feel strongly want to wait, that's perfectly okay as well.
So there was the one change that Eric pointed out in that one value. Do we expect any other values to change if we wait until next month?
No, this should be exactly mirrored what we brought in front of the council at the workshop. And those were just those minor changes that I had initially proposed to you guys versus cutting them down.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
All right. How do you feel about it, Jim? Since I know you weren't able to make last meeting.
I mean, if nothing's gonna change, then if it's the will of the board to move forward with it, I'm okay with that.
All right. Well, then I will make a motion to advance the 2026 proposed budget as presented today with the lower amounts forward to the council with a favorable recommendation.
Second.
Motion made, seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Carries 4-0. Takes us to item 8, new business. Consideration of recommendation to council to proceed with RFPQ for Station 271 build. Chief.
I don't know if you guys have that showing up yet.
Not yet.
All right. So I made a quick little slide deck presentation tonight to kind of go along with the discussion of this. I know it's not the first time we've talked about fire stations and their need and so on and so forth, but my request ultimately is to get the discussion going, to be able to go to council and seek the guidance to move forward with an official RFPQ to be able to get some actual costs to move forward with the station project. And along in this presentation, it kind of goes with the recommendation from myself as far as where we feel the data has driven us for station locations. So it's short, I promise, and I'll try not to get in the weeds unless we want to. But like we've mentioned before in these meetings, two of the main driving standards that we look at when we're going through this process of figuring things out are the NFPA's 1710 and ISO. And the NFPA standard is essentially for amount of personnel you should have on the scene and how quick they should get there within the apparatus for a career department. And then the Insurance Services Office, the rating there, the bonus is with ISO is they have mirrored the 1710 standard. There's a couple different ways they look at it, but essentially it all boils down to being able to have your first arriving apparatus on scene within a 4-minute response time. Right, and with any other standard, you want to hit in that top 90th percentile or for 90% of your runs to make that standard. So those are the things we kind of looked at there, but I'll get into the mapping response profile. These show roughly using Google Maps. We're still working on trying to get the GIS to make it a little more exact. But using Google Maps here, this gives us where we can get to from our current stations in a 4-minute response. Okay, so these are where our stations are at currently. And we notice there's a gap north, and then there's a gap central there that's a little bit difficult. And then we're going to have some fringe edges. It's really tough to put a bunch of fire stations in just randomly to cover 100% of your area, but we want to cover as much as possible, and I'll show you where we feel we can end up in an efficient way having 4 stations. Our next slide here, I just wanted to add our incident locations. So this is actually 2023 data, but I'll show you data from 2019 to 2024 at the very end here, and you'll see where our runs are located, and they're pretty much in that Main Street thoroughfare and along Whitestown Parkway. And then, of course, we have some kind of strained out randomly, and then we have some up within the Albert S. White corridor and I-65 as well. What I am recommending we do is move the fire station location of 271, which is currently on 575 and 300 South. I would like to see it move to Main Street and Albert S. White. You'll see what that does with our coverage area around the area we're having the most runs in now. And this will give us an efficient response for that, but also for our future build out. So this extra polygon on top here, it's just kind of a random location, but somewhere in the 500 East, 200 South area. And it could be over to that 575 area as well. Somewhere in between there on 200 South would give us that ideal coverage. Now what's changed from the last time we talked is this is what we are seeing now by looking at the data and what's to come with development, that we can have a more efficient location, making this our 3rd station. That leaves a little gap within that predominantly industrial area right now that you see there. But a fire station at Main Street would also have direct access down Albert S. White. And again, these polygons aren't necessarily perfect. It's really by speed limit, by Google Map. It's by putting a point on the map and saying, okay, it'll take you 4 minutes to get there. So these can fluctuate a little bit, but this gives us a really good idea. And then a complete coverage map in the future, as it's dictated by how busy we are and what our needs for service are. This would be our Station 274. at the 267 I-65 area is what we're looking at here. And this would give us 4 stations and complete coverage over the area, ideally without having to intermix a 5th station in there, which requires more personnel, more apparatus, more upkeep of buildings, where 4 could cover us completely at a complete build-out for the town of Whitestown and unincorporated Worth Township. And then this last slide here, this is just that stretch of data, right, from 2019 to 2024. If you see, there's a few more scattered dots, but the main hub of our runs is still within the corridors that we talked about and that we're trying to address as we're at right now, and then moving forward to make sure we get that Station 3 on the north end and get that covered as soon as possible. And then as the need arises for that 4th station in the further future, we'd be set there as well. Now that's a lot to kind of throw at right now, but
Chief, is, because I see the boundary of Whitestown and unincorporated Worth there. Is anything outside of that, is that considered mutual aid?
it's not our primary response area outside the blue. Now, that doesn't mean, like we have automatic aids set up with Lebanon and Zionsville and Center Township and really pretty much everybody in Boone County. Those are just the ones we neighbor that's automatically set up. But that is dictated by the jurisdiction's own doing, right? So we get to set up who we're asking for in our areas, and they get to do the same with theirs. But we're all helping each other as the run stats every month dictate.
Thank you.
So as you're progressing through this, there's a lot of calls for service to Lebanon. Who are you thinking of covering those?
I'm
as
sorry?
you move forward? So when we're talking about a Station 3 and a Station 4 in the future, who do you have? Let's say you have the 3. Who do you have covering Lebanon? Because we have a lot of aid to Lebanon. Now, granted, a fair amount's ambulances, but that's a lot of calls to Lebanon.
Right, and that is Lebanon's call on when they request us or not. And as of this point in time, it's not detrimental to our service to our community to assist them. And of course, it's reciprocal when we have calls as well. But that's always something we're constantly looking at as we go.
I'm just a little worried. Your map here has a 3rd station up there, and given neighborhoods are filling in there too, but that 3rd station doesn't help if they're in Lebanon all the time. So I'm just curious as to what our coverage is looking like for the mutual aid there. Granted, I hope Lebanon's growing their department, given they're having to consume a lot of aid, and certainly I appreciate that they provide aid to us too. We're not the Whitestown Lebanon Fire Department, so I want to make sure we're planning for our people and not Lebanon's people.
Right. And that is, like I said, a constant discussion between the departments on how we go with that. And to my understanding, Lebanon is progressing with the 3rd fire station. Obviously not my ideal, or not my lane, to be able to say exactly what their plans are. But that is something that we constantly consider to make sure we're not stretching ourselves too thin to help everybody else and not be here to cover.
So this mapping then is just considering our coverage area. It's not considering calls as a whole, because as I recall, NFPA carves out mutual aid responses, correct? For the
Correct.
standard.
Yeah, so we are worried about our jurisdiction and how our coverage looks for that. But the automatic aid does help us with our ISO rating as well. So areas that we cannot currently reach are still covered. But none of the station locations I failed to mention on the ISO portion in our rating, it does not degrade anybody's rating by moving the station. And that is because our rating is solely based on how close you are to a creditable water source. So a fire hydrant or a certified dry hydrant from a pond. So really in Whitestown's area, that only is hydrants. We don't have any creditable water source that we have dry hydrants, but we don't have any that ISO considers a creditable water source on paper, if you will. But still, this does not affect anybody's rating.
Can you back up one slide? I think is the one without a 4 there. Okay. Do these reflect future road improvement plans, or is it based off of today's roads?
It's based off of today's roads, but it's also based off of the incident locations as well,
Yeah.
with that north-south Main Street corridor.
I'm thinking of the timeline response more so than that, right? Only because I'm here thinking as we look at stations, we also as a town need to be thinking about roads, because the roads are going to affect how far those polygons travel too. So it was probably less so for this conversation and more so for conversations on that side as we think about capital road improvements.
Playing off of what Eric just said, I would agree, we have to look at the future. 575 has been designated, it's gonna be a 4-lane road. Having the station, if we leave 71 where it's at now versus moving it to Main Street, as 575 improves, becomes a 4-lane road, we know traffic is, the flow is gonna improve, the ability for cars to get out of the way of the fire truck is gonna improve. We know that these polygons are based on Google plugging in current speed limits. We all know that the trucks don't run the actual speed limit when they're going to emergency, or at least we hope we don't. We want them to get there and save people. So if they're going 10 miles over the speed limit, that you can reasonably deduce that that polygon would expand by 20–25%. So the coverage is a little bit better than what's shown on the map, at least in my opinion. I've never been a fan. I don't think it's any big secret that I'm not a fan of moving 271 as opposed to improving it, bringing it up to current standards. I'm more inclined to lean towards the need for Station 3 to the north, because we know that the growth is coming up there. The Braun projects are building out. The growth is going to come. We know the growth is coming already to 575. Those houses are going up like crazy, so that area is going to start booming like Main Street is now. I think we're going to see a lot more of those dots along 575 in the next couple years. So it still makes sense to me, at least, to leave 71 where it's at, start looking at how we can get funding and land for a 3rd station.
When I'm looking at this, I see something different on the map, with all due respect, and that is that if 71 were to stay where it's at currently, that 3rd station there'd be so much overlap, and there would be a gap down towards the central right side, the central east side, where so many of these things are happening, especially with the commercial growth that's going to happen on Albert S. White and up at 300, where Braun's putting in that property up there as well, and higher density. So I can see where Chief is getting some of the need to have 273 pick up some of the burden that 271 takes now for the northern sector, and 271 would do the lion's share of that Main Street corridor, Albert S. White, and those environs as well. So I see what you're looking for your overlap on that, with where the incidents frankly are occurring and where the density is with apartments and townhomes and those little tiny homes with Trullo and everything else coming through with the commercial as well. So I do see the logic there. I don't think anybody here would argue that 271, regardless of where it ultimately sits, 271 needs a new house. You know, it is not up to caliber right now, just bluntly. So as part of the RFPQ process, can I assume that location scouting and more fine tuning on the ideal placement would be part of that process?
Yeah, I think ultimately that's part of any, like, the design phase portion of it, right, is being able to have that idea. Now, I feel you'll get a better RFPQ of knowing exactly where the fire station is going to land so they can really incorporate all that into it. But I think you could go either way as far as how much you put into that for the proposal request.
So jumping back real quick, I don't necessarily disagree with what Mr. Patterson had to say, but my concern is that moving 71 as opposed to refurbishing what we've got and making it, bringing it up to modern standards, the cost to move 71 is going to delay the cost to build Station 3. So the overlap that you're talking about is well down the road as opposed to meeting a more current need and getting Station 3 online sooner rather than later, if that's the direction we decide to go.
Respectfully, I disagree a little bit because in my mind, 271 would be a tear down and build anyway. So you're talking about the same kind of expense. Because I'm not talking about, and I don't think Chief is talking about simply retrofitting 271 as it exists today. I'm thinking he's talking about a new purpose-built building. So the length of time on it wouldn't be altered based on the one location versus the other. And I don't think that would have any negative effect on his third station. Of course, I'm not a civic planner or engineer, just my 2 cents on that we're not talking about simply fixing up 271. We're talking about a new station house entirely, which regardless of location would still take roughly the same amount of time.
So to respond to that, I guess what I was envisioning, 271 underwent some upgrades just a few years back. We added an extra bay, we added some other stuff inside to make it more livable, more comfortable for all of our first responders. I guess what I'm envisioning is that the bay area of 271 would stay. If we could acquire land that's actually for sale right next door, and we could build a new structure for the quarters and the bunks and all that stuff, but maintain the bays that we have now. Part of that station, we could still run out of that station while the additions were being made. So the station remains functional and online. And we reduce the cost because we've already got the land. We don't have to acquire the land. We know it doesn't need, if we build over on Main Street, we're probably going to have to look at the extra expenses of retention ponds. Because if memory serves, I think that area was low. We would have to check with somebody and make sure, but to acquire the extra land, not just for the station, but for a retention pond if it's needed. Whereas I think 271 could be accomplished cheaper and quicker, and then concentrate on putting that money and funding towards Station 3.
How much extra effort would it be to investigate both of those avenues?
That I don't know.
Yeah, because that would actually be my recommendation, since you brought it up, is to do dual RFPQs. One, to explore the possibility of putting a brand new station next to Main Street Park, and one for rehabbing what we've got with 271, just to give us something to compare to. We can't go back to our constituents and say, this is definitely the best thing going, this is what we need to do, without having all things to consider.
Something to compare it to.
Right.
If I may, I just kind of want to make it clear that my recommendation from the data we have is to relocate the station. Redoing 271s does away with that recommendation. So I'm obviously, this is out of my hands, right? This is the fire board's decision, but I did want to make it clear that investigating that rebuild, which is why I haven't put a lot of thought into that, is because I see that the stations need to move a little bit for overall growth. I guess that's what I'm saying, is that's where my information is coming from.
Right, I totally appreciate that you've put the research and the time and everything into this and looked at the requirements. It's something relatively new to us, so just exploring possibilities.
On this setup, what's your timeline look like for 73?
I think 73 is directly related to be able to get personnel to put another apparatus into service. If we're able to have the funding for another 9 personnel, would be ideal at a minimum. Could put us an engine in service to be running out of our current stations now, and then develop into a Station 273.
And how big are you envisioning 273 being?
I envision it being like an engine and medic house.
So a 2-bay, with the exception of like maybe it's double deep, but
Yeah, 2-bay, maybe
2-bay,
3-bay as well. I
house.
mean, with the minimal cost, I guess, of adding a bay space. The extra bay space isn't necessarily a bad thing. But 2 apparatus running out of it, yes.
and what are you thinking about as you're talking about RFPQs for a new 271 for size? Are you talking 272 level?
We're talking a 3-bay firehouse. It's going to be, if you take off the headquarters and the main training room portion of our current station, it'll be about that size. So it'll be for 10 personnel staffing. So you could run 2 fire apparatus and an ambulance out of that station, and being kind of the central located on the thoroughfare and within proximity down Albert S. White to the commercial area. That would likely be an engine ladder ambulance station in the future as we build out. Right now we're running Quince, but we know that as we grow and proceed to get more personnel and more runs, and that justifies, then we start breaking those out into separate engine and ladder apparatus to cover our area.
And the real recommendation from Fire Board would come at the end, once you actually have the designs, the amounts, the costs, that sort of thing. This is more of kind of a preliminary, hey, this is something we're going to look into. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't turn mine off. I know that we owe updates, at the very least refurbishment, if not entirely new house, to the firefighters that work out of 271. I've talked to a few regarding some of their concerns with 271, which we won't go into at the moment. You know them as well as I do. And I think it's something that we owe, especially as fire departments get more competitive. If you bring new people in and say, hey, this is your house now, right? You want to be somewhere that they feel safe, cared for, and will suit their needs. So I do appreciate you doing this work, and I'm excited to see what comes out of it.
So to be clear then here, what you're looking for is our position on moving forward with just starting to find out what the cost would be, so that
Yeah.
we can have discussions about costs with some kind of real data as to what a station's going to cost.
Right, and ultimately, this is like a transparency thing, right? Pushing forward with this because there is major moves with this to allow the discussion in the public setting, to be able to see where the fire department's at, and push that forward. And ultimately, the RFPQs will give us that, hopefully, that fine-tuned estimated cost of what it would be, so I can proceed with this is what it's going to be, instead of saying, hey, I've talked to 3 different companies and they're saying 10 to 12 million, to be able to actually put some effort into this to get an exact price to move forward.
Do you have any idea on land for that 273 proposed there? Do we have any that we're looking at?
The only option that I know of right now that has even been mentioned is potential property deal within a development up there, but that has not really been looked into further yet, but it's absolutely something we can do. I mean, I would love to have property for all 4 stations secured, the way the growth is happening in this town, to be able to plant a flag, if you will, to say this is where fire stations are going to be as we need them, would be ideal. And that way we're not fighting over availability of where they need to be, and not fitting our needs as well as they could currently.
I think if we're gonna be looking at moving potentially a 271, then we need to start moving on land for a 273. I mean, I think if we're pulling something down farther, we're exposing that, because if you remove this one, then, right, your blue plus your yellow at the bottom leaves a big gap on the north and west side. We better have a plan for that expeditiously as we go forward. And I think a key piece of that is land, because land is not getting more available around here. So we need to start finding some land ASAP. If that's potentially what the plan is here, we need to start exploring interest on land in that area to try to find something.
I would love to be able to investigate the economies of scale more, if you are so inclined to maybe do two at once. I mean, we can.
Give you some money for some land if I win the Powerball tonight. How about that?
But no, it is important to, stay abreast of what's happening, plan for the future, and plan accordingly rather than trying to catch up with it. And I see where Eric's going with that. And no one's saying go out and write a check at the moment, but it doesn't hurt to start those wheels turning, I think.
Yeah, I think if we're contemplating pulling this station down that way, then we have potentially created in the near term quite a gap across where there's a lot of development going on currently and planned, wrapping around down into some pretty critical areas that are growing and occupied down here, by the highway as well. A choice of it, if we make it to move 71 down that way, means we got to get cracking on a 73. I mean, we're effectively, and it doesn't, I think, really have anything to do with what's before us today of exploring the cost, but something we sort of have to consider as future cost is we need to move quick if we're doing that, because we're opening a big gap where a lot of people are moving in, and I don't want to burn down the neighborhood. I mean, I'm fortunate if this body that I have wrecked drops in the yard. I've got a fire station right down the street. As a firefighter, historically, I've got some worries if we create a big gap in this section and we are not moving expeditiously on plans to fill that gap. But I'm not telling you anything you don't know either, being in the service.
And I would say I share that concern. Jim and I sit on this board because we represent the people of Worth Township that are in the unincorporated area, which would be out in those areas.
Yes.
I mean, it's hard to put a timeline on it, but if we were talking about moving a 71 in 2 years, we better have a 73 done in about 4 years. Right? I don't think it impacts our finding out what it costs to build a station these days. I think we need to figure out what it costs to build a station these days, because I think that's where we're at, is if your numbers are telling you that we've got to move this thing, well, then we need to know what the numbers are, because we're talking in very short order, 2 of them, I think, different scope and size of them, but we're talking, we better have one working on plans while the other's getting bricks laid.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I mean, we're effectively here, I think, again, not tonight, but should this plan move forward, I think what's before the fire board next as this progresses along is it time that it's time to blow up and become a 3-station department and get cracking? I think is the ultimate question to us.
And I know we really didn't, this isn't about Station 273, but I know you talked about maybe making it a 2 or a 3 bay, but I would think if you're gonna put a station up to the north side, I would think it would be a good idea maybe to relocate the grass rig up there, because that's probably gonna be where most of your grass fires are gonna be.
Right, and that's kind of the reasoning behind sticking with the 3-bay firehouse is not only for room for reserve apparatus and such, but for our ancillary apparatus as well.
I think, because we're not in a position to say, hey, 271 and 273 at the same time, as fun as that would be. But I think you're obviously going to want to do the RFPQ, get real numbers, make sure of your positioning and your maps and, hey, this is exactly what we want to do. And should that recommendation go through, then council approves that, I'd say within a 3-month quarter of that approval is when you start with the RFPQ for the next one to get that, just to start learning what that would be, or at least as a build were to progress. So you can kind of hopscotch that second one, or third one, progressing it. But, you get the one going, because there's no reason to mess with the 273 if 271 doesn't go anywhere, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think my first crux go is if we get somewhere that we're talking about and choose to move 271, we should have some idea what land we can buy for 73 so that we're placing based on your numbers rather than we're placing based upon what developer decides to acquire what lots and build things. I think it's the decision for the council and this fire board when we get to that point is one that's going to require some, hopefully, knowledge by that point as to what land is potentially available there, and we should really be looking at acquiring that ASAP so that we have a spot. And I mean, that, to me at least, that's one of the biggest challenges of building a firehouse, is getting your land where your numbers say you need your land. If it comes to it, it's pretty easy, frankly, to float a bond and build a building on it. Obviously, personnel is a little more challenging because it's a persistent cost year after year. But I think if we're moving along, right, the next step, or probably the step now, I would say, is we need to start approaching some of those people and see what their interest might be in land in the area that your numbers say
And
land is important.
if I may, on that topic, there have been some builders and developers that have not necessarily made offers, but have expressed the potential of making offers of carving out some of their land for civic buildings and for things that Whitestown would need. So if the RFPQ comes to pass, I'd be happy to put you in touch with some of those that have shown that kind of goodwill that may be a benefit to the town and mutually beneficial to that developer in the town to do something like that.
Again, a question for another night, but one we need to think about since we're starting this conversation at this point. Sorry, Jim.
And what I would say is I agree with Mike. I'm not a big fan of moving 271 just because it moves it further away from the people that we represent. But I also agree with Dan, if we do decide to go forward with this, and with Eric also, we need to get moving right behind that with looking where we're going to put 273. Because that's, I just wanted to go on record and say, I see everybody's point. But if we're gonna proceed with this option, I think, yeah, we need to be proceeding with option 3 as well.
Any other discussion around this?
How soon are we looking to do something with this RFPQ and make a decision whether or not to send it to council?
I mean, I don't know. What's your timeline?
Timeline for the RFPQs to put it in front of council next week to see what their will is.
And that would not be a up or down vote. That would be more of an acknowledgement, just like this is, because there's no vote until you come to us with numbers and cost. Please let me know if I'm wrong. Okay. So it would be a courtesy communication to council next week, but there would be no vote on it. When do you expect to publish the RFPQ, Chief?
Well, if the will is to move forward with that, we could publish it quite rapidly. We've been working on draft forms of what that's going to look like as far as the RFPQ goes. So probably a 45 to 60 day time frame, I guess, on the turnaround of whenever that gets started.
So publishment, certain publishing guidelines, 45 to 60 day turnaround. You're probably looking right near the end of the year to get your offers back, around there.
Correct.
Okay. Does that kind of answer what you were looking for?
Yeah, I mean, that's talking about then before the fire board, probably the December meeting at that point, maybe November, but probably December.
Yeah,
by the time we're on.
that's what I would
timelines on
think,
that.
yeah. Thanks, Chief.
That'll make it fun Christmas for everybody. So again, the item before us then is our opinion on moving forward to start getting these RFPQs to get some data to operate upon for whatever our next discussions are, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Is there a vote that needs to be taken on this? Is it a notification? What is it we're?
There really isn't a formalized vote required at this time. It's more of a consideration just to allow Chief to know how to move forward with council next week. And I wanted to reiterate, I mean, this is by no means at all agreeing to any of the costs that are put forth. I mean, at this point, I don't think anybody actually really knows how much it's going to cost to build a station. I mean, I'm sure there's a ballpark figure in his head, but until you even put the RFPQs out and receive them back, you won't know. And you can reject all bids. So, I mean, there's really no harm in putting an RFPQ out there for this station. If you get something back you don't like, you can scrap it all, start over again whenever that time period would feel right to you.
All right. Well, I am not opposed to having data so that we can have a conversation around whether numbers even make sense or if they're crazy. So I will, we don't need a motion, but I'll make one to make a favorable recommendation to council to proceed with RFPQs for a potential Station 271 build.
Mr.
Seconded.
President,
Yes, sir.
would you be willing to amend your motion, even though a motion is not needed, to include a second RFPQ to look at redoing the Station 71 that we have now, so that we can compare side by side?
Sure. So I will scrap my motion because I don't mind having that data either to see what that looks like. In case we don't move forward with moving, then we should know because we still got to do something about the existing. So I will instead go with a motion to recommend to council to proceed with RFPQs for a Station 271 build and a refit of existing 271.
To be clear, Mr. Chairman, this doesn't have anything to do with location. Whether we build it on its existing footprint or on a new footprint, you could just approve an RFPQ request.
Yeah, I would like an RFPQ specific for it though to see, is that even an option or we need to level the thing? Or, I mean, honestly, we might find out a refit costs more than a new one anyway, but
Sure.
I don't think it hurts it.
I would second the motion on the table.
Just as a point of order, I'm trying to think through the RFPQ and how it would make most sense. Didn't think of that one before, but I'm wondering also to put a little leeway instead of doing two separate ones, to do like an alternative bid within the RFPQ. If you'd be comfortable with, like, if somebody wanted to propose new station or rebuild and have that as an option, because some people might not want to bid out for a retrofit versus the same companies might not want to do both. And I was just trying to, in the interest of time, maybe the actual wording of the RFPQ could incorporate what you want, but it be in one RFPQ.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think my motion requires a separate RFPQ, just that it be covered however you want to cover it.
Okay.
However it makes sense to the builders to cover it. Even if that includes asking a few that normally do remodels instead of builds, but I think my motion's open enough to allow whatever method makes the most sense.
Sure.
Okay. So we got a motion and a second on a favorable recommendation to council to proceed with an RFPQ for a 271 build and refit of existing 271. Any further discussion, questions? All right, that is the motion before the board. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carries 4-0. Any other business to come before the fire board? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second. Motion to adjourn and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Carries 4-0. We stand adjourned. Thank you.